Well, look, the Obama campaign spied on our campaign, and they've been caught, all right? And now let's see what happens to them. But they have been caught. They've been caught red-handed. It's probably treason. It's a horrible thing they did. It probably never happened before. At least nobody got caught doing it. But they used the intelligence agencies of our country to spy on my campaign.
I think there's spying did occur. Yes, I think spying did occur.
President Obama knew about it. Joe Biden knew about it. Comey knew about it. Brennan, Clapper, the whole group, they all knew about it. Lisa Page, her lover struck, they all knew about it. And we have it documented, we have it in texts, we have it in all sorts of forms. They knew about it. It was a terrible thing. Should have never happened and should never be allowed to happen again to a president. This should never happen again. This was a setup like we've never seen. I think it's the political crime of the century. And they've been caught. So let's see what happens to them all.
Laura and I are honored to be here tonight. Thanks for the invitation. What a fantastic audience we have tonight. Washington power brokers, celebrities, Hollywood stars, Ozzy Osbourne. Okay, Ozzy. Might have been a mistake. The thing about Ozzy is he's made a lot of big hit recordings. Party with the Animals. Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, Facing Hell, Black Skies, and Bloodbath in Paradise. Ozzy, Mom loves your stuff.
I gotta say, you could say what you want about George Bush.
He was funny.
And we have had numerous conversations here at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello, going way in the breeze. Numerous conversations about George Bush, part of the New World Order, the oligarchs. But dude was funny. I mean, the media focused on the dumb things he said, but sometimes he just made you laugh. And Ozzy, just in his own way, he was. I don't even think Ozzy knew he was funny. Ozzy,
dude, he was a natural.
Ozzy.
He was a natural. Like when he passed, there was a lot of clips going on X, like some of which were from like the Osbournes, like the reality show. Dude, that was hysterical. Like, yeah. And he wasn't trying to be funny. It's just who he was.
He was just being Ozzy.
Total character, dude.
Let me tell you, I was a fan of Black Sabbath. All right. In my office, when we heard the other day that Ozzy had passed, we have one of those little machines where from your phone, you could broadcast a song. I'm so old. I forgot what they're called. and they were playing like, that song. They were, what is that? Crazy Train. I said, dude, if we're going to honor Azie right now, I said, put on War Pigs.
Oh, yeah.
And make it loud. All right. Put on War Pigs and make it loud. And not for nothing, as we've gotten older, maybe not so knee-jerk conservative as when, let's say, maybe you and I both, before I even knew you, going back about 25 years, like before the Iraq War, I thought, all that War Pig stuff. And War Pigs was written as a song that was in protest of the Vietnam War. We know that, okay? But they make some really good, whether it was Azie who wrote the song, I forgot who exactly wrote the song. Maybe it was Azie. It's spot on. War Pigs is a spot on song, okay? Talking, if you listen to the lyrics, we're going to talk about some of it tonight. Joe, there's War Pigs at every phase in human history. There are people that just want war. And that's why I was like, when I'm in a mood, I put on War Pigs because it's just so friggin' spot on. Aside from the fact that the guitar work in War Pigs is through the roof, particularly towards the end of the song.
The thing that I found to be very impressive, one, they just had that farewell concert. It was almost like God threw him a bone. Like I almost thought when I saw he died, I was like, I can't even believe he just died. He just had a concert. It was massive. It was a tribute concert. Also, the outpouring. I mean, celebrities die all the time. And obviously people, are upset, whatever. Dude, all types of people reached out. Like the most impressive one for me was Pat Boone. He was his neighbor. Like he was like, I live next door to Azie. And, they probably live in like Bel Air, like wealthy people. He was a great neighbor. There was a picture he posted of him with like hedge clippers in like Pat Boone's like garden. And they're both like laughing. Like he was loved, legitimately, like loved by people. That was the impressive thing with that like whole passing that I found to be like, wow, this dude was really like loved. People loved him.
Oh yeah. Hey, listen, as far as it goes, we always, and Joe, I know you do and I do, and we would encourage people out there who are Christians to pray for the dead. Okay. And I don't care who they are. You should pray for the dead. You should pray for their souls. Pray for Azie. Pray for Hulk. Hulk Hogan died this week, 71 years old. Even Azie is 76 years old. That's not old.
No, I get it.
According to modern medical standards, a man should actually live ideally into his 80s. Now, again, your body starts breaking down. My mom is going to be turning 86. Her body's breaking down, and obviously, eventually, all people die. But here's the thing. 76 is not old. Azie had a few years left. Now, some of that probably has to do with some substances, and we know that. And quite frankly, in the case of Hulk Hogan, maybe the same thing. A human person doesn't get that big without some assistance. Let's put it like that. And tragically, Theo Huxtable, Malcolm Jamal Warner, passed away this week.
He drowned.
Got caught in a riptide, right? He drowned.
Yeah, it's horrible.
So we have to always remember, listen, there but for the grace of God go I, okay? These are people who had material wealth and everything else, whatever the case may be. But it shows you could go like that. So we need to pray for the dead. Pray for Azie. Hey, listen, at the end of the day, I don't care what anybody says. Azie was an entertaining dude.
Oh, dude.
He really was. And as far as the other parts of the opening that we played, and we're going to get into that, we got a great show for you today at the front line with Joe and Joe, because we're going to talk about Canada and the unfairness north of the border. And it is unfair. Howard Lutnick, Obama, that dude is shady. That dude is shady. We always knew that.
I was just going to say, I always knew that, to be honest.
We knew he was shady. He's the Manchurian candidate. He's a guy who's Obama pulls other people's strings, like Joe Biden, okay? But Obama has his strings pulled too. You don't get to a what is it, Joe? If you're at 100 million, you're at a 9-figure net worth, okay? You don't get to a 9-figure net worth because you were president of the United States. You get to that level because you're corrupt. You never produced anything. You never created anything. Okay, you're not the CEO of AMD or Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. You could like or dislike those people. They actually created something. That's why they're worth a lot of money. Obama, you never created anything. What you did was You did the bidding of your puppet masters, and we're going to get into that. Because Tulsi Gabbard, Joe, I love a comment before we keep going. Tulsi Gabbard's got more stones than all of them, as far as I'm concerned.
I'll tell you, and we'll talk about it when we play the clip. I personally think, while everything is true, that there definitely was spying on the Trump campaign, unarguable. Now, who had their hand, as in there's evidence, we're going to see about that. Did Obama know about it? I would not doubt that for a minute. Did Joe Biden know about it? I would not doubt that for a minute. As far as what Trump said, is that a scandal? Much bigger than Watergate. Infinitely bigger than Watergate. However, why now? And this is where I'm going to go with it later on. I think it was to distract the people from what happened with Epstein. Because ultimately, that is my opinion. It's obviously I'm entitled to it. I do think a lot of people are still asking about that. And this was to distract. That's why that was floated now. As far as the courage to do it, absolutely takes courage. Will Obama go to jail? No way. No chance. Will he be discredited deeply? Yes, he will.
How about this? How about I concede to you, and we'll get into it later. How about I concede to you that Obama won't go to jail, but it would be really nice to see him at an arraignment. That's what I'd like to see. They hauled Trump into court. I want to see Obama have to go into court with a bunch of lawyers. Maybe he'll get the feeling of what but again, this is a guy, he's a political animal. That's all he is, okay? He's about his own power, his own wealth, his own influence. So he probably wouldn't care, and he probably in his mind would think what you just said, Joe. I'll never end up in jail. But it would be nice to see him in court. It would be nice for somebody to say, we have charges against you, sir. That alone, because I am with you. I'm suffering under no illusion, Joe, that he's going to jail, nor Hillary Clinton, nor Clapper, nor Brennan, nor any of them. But it would be nice to see shake them up a little bit. I would be a little satisfied with that. We're going to talk about Israel. And again, we have to. We have to. If you want sympathy, and I think after October 7th, it would be well-placed sympathy, because that was atrocious, okay, what Hamas did on October 7th a couple of years ago, okay? But your reaction also comes under scrutiny. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to play a Michael Knowles clip. Nigel Farage is spot on. He's saying, if you want civil disobedience, you're going to get it. And what's going on in London right now is completely ridiculous. And we also have to talk about the fact that we're going to get into it in the show. We have a clip from a real entertainer, a man by the name of Johnny Carson, respected because he wasn't political. And we're going to talk about that too. And the fact that every single one of them, there is no exception to late night shows, Joe. None of them are Johnny Carson. None of them can ever be Johnny Carson or Jack Benny or Ed Sullivan or any one of them because they're too political. They allow the politics in. We're going to talk about that. So let's start, Joe, if you don't mind. Let's start with Canada. Let's give a little backdrop here. I read something today. These are facts. The United States has a $29-30 trillion economy, $89,000 per capita GDP, crushing Europe, crushing China. China's at about 19 trillion. We're at about 29 trillion, okay? But the game has been constantly rigged, and this is why they hate Trump. The game was Americans have more GDP. We should take more from them. That's all this tariff war is about, Joe. Okay, and you know I follow it very, very closely because I follow the markets very, very closely, the stock markets in particular, all right? That you rig the game so that we pay more for pharmaceuticals, we pay more in tariffs. Donald Trump today, Joe, this came out today, Sunday, as we're here at the front line with Joe and Joe. The EU has agreed. You catch this, Joe, all right? Swish this around in your mouth like a fine wine. They've agreed. Now, this is according to what I was reading, several sources on X. No tariffs on American goods going into the EU. 15% tariff coming in on EU goods coming into the United States. And a guarantee of $750 billion a year that they have to guarantee, that the EU has to guarantee they're buying from the United States. Okay? So my larger point is this. The EU knows that they can't compete with us. They can't. Their entire economy, all of the EU, is at about $20 trillion. We're 50% higher than that, and we're one country. Why does Canada think that they can push us around? So, and you know more about this than I do. So what I want to do is I want to play Howard Lutnick. For all you out there joining us at the front line with Joe and Joe, please, wherever you're watching this, we got a great show for you today. A lot of clips, a lot of discussion. So like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Let me play Howard Lutnick, Joe, talking about Canada, and then we'll come back and we'll have a little back and forth.
Plan called USMCA, U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement. Virtually 75% of all goods coming from Mexico and Canada already come in tariff-free. The president said, look, unless you stop this fentanyl and close the border, we're just going to keep tariffs on the other 25%. And that's what he has on. So don't be confused about it. The president understands that we need to open the markets. Canada is not open to us. They need to open their market. Unless they're willing to open their market, they're going to pay a tariff. That's a simple message the president has. It's fair trade. It's reciprocal trade. Why should we have our country be wide open while theirs is closed? This is an 80-year wrong that President Trump is trying to fix, and our businesses are going to really, really enjoy it. I think the president's going to open between $300 and $400 billion of opportunity for Americans. That's 1.5%, up to 1.5% GDP growth, because the president's going to open all these markets up. Yeah. You saw it with Vietnam. You saw it with Indonesia. You're going to watch all these other countries decide if they want to do business with America. Let's just open our market up to America. That's opportunity that President Trump is bringing.
I want to give you my quick take. A lot of what is going on with these tariffs, okay, in my view, over the last decade, even more than a decade, has been because of the environmental hoax, this climate change hoax that they try to perpetrate. Canada is part of that. The EU is part of that, okay? All these countries, they don't like the fact that in America, we still ostensibly, Joe, have a democracy, and most people don't buy it. They think it's a lot of horse crap, okay? They say, you know, you're just trying to hurt our economy. You're a bunch of neo-Marxists. You use the environmental hoax as a means by which you try to instill fear in people. We're all going to die. The world's coming to an end. We've heard it a million times from Al Gore and Bill Nye, the science guy, and all this kind of stuff, okay? And what they try to do in collusion is force us to pay more because we're not capitulating. In fact, you know, I'll give you a quick aside. America is more environmentally conscious, but we do it more through the free market. So we're actually cleaner than all these other countries because we do it through the free market. We incentivize people to be cleaner. We allow them to make money to be cleaner, clean energy and everything else, okay? So that's one of the things they don't like. They don't want the free market to do it. They want the government to do it. Why? Because they're neo-Marxists. Canada, now EU, like I started with this, Joe, EU just capitulated, and that's a capitulation, Joe, because they know that they need us. And I know I'm a little bit of a rant. If we decided to put a 50% tariff on French wine and champagne coming to America, you know what France will do? They'll crumble if we ever did that to them. We buy so much. Joe, you know I work in a restaurant. I know in the hospitality industry, restaurants, hotels, bars, how much French wine and French champagne is in there. Put a 50% tariff on them and see how fast they crumble, because that's a very big part of their economy. My larger point is that Trump is resetting this on a practical level, saying you're not going to rob us anymore, but they're thwarting their ideological goals, which is government control of industry and the whole 9 yards through the climate change hoax. And Canada, not for nothing, if they better take a lesson from the EU. You're going to come around or we won't buy any of your products. And that includes energy. And then the Canada's going to suffer. So I expect them to crumble. I'll throw it over to you.
Here's the thing. Mark Carney doesn't care if they suffer, because this
I agree 1,000%.
He does not care. And this is not a dispute about logic. This is an ideological dispute. Mark Carney ideologically does not agree with Trumpism. He does not ideologically, and Mark Carney is an elite and he is wealthy. This is a message to Canadians. We have a large Canadian, viewing ship, and we always try to talk a little bit about Canada. Thank God for the folks, all you guys that listen. He doesn't care about you. I think you know that, but this is something that's front and center. It should be front and center to you, knowing that his life doesn't change, nor do any of the elites in Canada's life change. Your life does. And he's willing to make that sacrifice. You're not a part of that decision, because this is not a logical decision. Because, no offense to our viewers in Canada, this is a war you cannot win. You're not going to win a trade war with the United States of America. Joe just laid out the numbers. It's not a war you can win. So if he cared about his people, he wouldn't wage such a war. But he doesn't. And this is not a decision. This is not a business decision. This is an ideological decision, and it's a bad one, and it's a bad one for you.
Spot on. That's exactly right. And that's one of the, hey, that's the raison. I'm going to get a little French on you for our Canadian friends. Okay. That's our raison d'etre. That's one of the, Joe and I have always said from this time we started doing the show, we'd like to show ourselves, present ourselves as faithful Catholic men, as good Christians, and that informs our worldview. And we're going to blow up narratives, because that's part of being a Christian, is that you believe in the way, the truth, and the life. We're always supposed to seek truth, and you have to do that by blowing up lies. And you just hit it spot on. Mark Carney, Klaus Schwab, Yuval Harari, the EU, they don't give a damn about the people. You mentioned the word sacrifice. They're willing to make that sacrifice. The only problem is they ain't the one sacrificing. You are. You are. Let me tell you something, Joe, and I'll ask you a question. Is Mark Carney going to stop using oil and gas?
Oh, no way.
But the
Mark
average
Carney's worth probably a few $100 million. He was the president of a bank.
Right.
Dude, he's
cousins
wealthy.
who live in Niagara Falls and St. Catharines, okay?
He's wealthy.
My cousins who live there, my blood cousins, all right, they're going to pay through the S in Canada. They're going to suffer in Canada because Mark Carney doesn't give a damn about them. They always tell you that they care about you, but how do they frame it to make it seem like they care about you? They instill fear. You are all going to die if we don't impose these environmental regulations, because we're all going to die. So they make it seem like they care about you, but they do it through a hoax. The same way they did with COVID. We care about you. No, this is a power grab. As Joe Arsenello said on the show 1,000,000 times, it was the greatest transfer of wealth in the history of humanity, COVID. All the money went to the elites. Moderna went from $30 a share to $400 a share because they imposed vaccines. They locked people down. They drove up our debt. Okay? That's the way they do it. Mark Carney, listen, I don't know if he will or he won't, Joe, but if he really, I don't think he cares at all, but I don't know if he cares about his own power. But the fact is, Canada as a whole, they better get it through their heads. They're going to suffer. If Trump does what Lutnick just said, okay? If they're going to be obstinate, they're going to suffer, not us. Sorry, dude. Our nation of immigrants, the German, Irish, Italian, African Americans, obviously brought here in slavery, we're all contributing to a $30 trillion a year economy. And we have a lot of issues that we need to deal with here so that we participate more in that prosperity. Dude, we don't have to do business with you and we won't suffer. But if we don't do business with you, you will suffer.
Well,
Your
that's
people
what the
will, and
Canadian
Carney doesn't
people-
care.
They absolutely, and people, that has to be made very clear to people. Just like in America, as it is in Canada, it's just an ill-informed populace. That's one of the driving problems across the West. We have our populace, because the press is controlled. The press is controlled by advertising dollars, the same advertising dollars that contribute to campaigns. And because there's certain things you can't say. It's just the way it is. And if you listen to people who are now in the podcast form, who used to be in the mainstream media, they'll tell you that. There were certain topics you could not bring up. You couldn't say. Because ultimately, it's a show. It's a show. Mm-hmm. And that's just the way it is. The news is nothing more than a show. They have a message. It's a packaged message that they're selling. And it has a lot to do with who watches them. They know who watches them. They look at their metrics. And it also has a lot to do with who's buying advertising space. You're going to talk badly about the pharmaceutical industry if they're taking up tons and tons of your advertising space. Of course you're not.
Right.
Of course you're not.
Right. You can't.
You're going to get a
You
call
can't.
from you can't. The producer will be like, what did you just say? You can't.
Well, that's why independent media, and yes, we are Joe and Joe here at the front line with Joe and Joe. We're a part of independent media. We're not dependent on anybody. We have not sold our souls to Satan. So we could say what we want. I didn't sell my soul to a Republican. I didn't sell my soul to a Democrat, and I certainly didn't sell my soul to the devil himself or to the advertising industry, which is kind of the same thing. When you talk about, we've always said on the show here, the devil runs the advertising industry. You're exactly right. That's why independent media is so important. That's why they want to shut it down. They don't like people who don't care. Just like now, like you said, Tucker Carlson could say what he wants on Fox News to a point. Megyn Kelly was able to say what she wanted to Fox News up to a point. What did they both do? Now, Tucker was fired. Who knows? He might have left after a certain time. He's more prosperous now. Megyn Kelly's more prosperous now. Okay, all these other podcasters that were in mainstream media are more prosperous now. Why? Because the people, meaning all of us, okay, we could tell the truth from a lie. We could tell the snake oil salesman from the person who's asking sincere, truth-seeking questions on all these issues, Joe. Whether it's tariffs, whether it's abortion, no matter what it is, these people are asking sincere, truth-seeking questions. You want an interesting thing? And I have to admit this as a sin, okay? I detested, and to a certain degree, I still do, Anna Kasparian from the Young Turks, okay? Though she was a complete hack, shrill, feminist, everything. I just watched the other day, and I only got through half of it.
Too. It was pretty good with Tucker. I thought she did a good job.
But what did she say that was so important that pertains to this conversation? What did she say? She goes, I got a little bit tired of not being able to talk about certain things. And I think that's spot on. I think she is spot on. And she said to Tucker, we probably disagree on many, many, many things. But I think we're in fundamental agreement on this. We should be able to talk about those things. And she was so right and was so enlightened. I give her so much credit. And my view of her has completely changed. Not based on politics and not based on abortion. She's still all in favor of
No, I understand.
But the fact that she's willing to talk and have a conversation says a lot about her character, I think. What are your thoughts?
That's what people aren't willing to do. And frankly, some of those people don't have a leg to stand on, and that's why they don't have those conversations. Because to be honest with you, a lot of what they basically represent is pure propaganda. I mean, we talked about Epstein last week, and I don't want to rehash a topic which we talked extensively about last time we were here. But I watched a clip today from CNN, as if Democrats have like any legitimacy about criticizing Trump, about not being forthright with the Epstein debacle. You guys sat on this for 12 years. This has been going on since George Bush. Any human being that, I don't even know how you could say that and think that people would buy it. It's so ridiculous. And yet they do. And that to me automatically says you're a disingenuous person. You cannot be believed. You have no moral credibility. Right now, the Democrats in America have a 33%. This is CNN, 33% approval rating. Right. 33%. You're not winning anything.
And that's going low. By the way, just on the economic front, Joe, just on the based on what I just told you about the EU deal. And now they did pause, which shows progress. They paused, put another 90-day pause on the deal with China, which I think is appropriate because you're dealing with a much larger economy. You're dealing with China. I think their GDP is at about 20 trillion. As I mentioned earlier, ours is 30 trillion. Okay. That's going to take a little bit more wrangling, but that's a positive sign because the pause at 90 days means that they're talking. But here's the thing, the EU coming along, and me personally, this is not investment advice, so don't take it this way. I think the market's going to be up huge tomorrow. I really do. Tomorrow morning, Monday morning, I think the market's going to be up huge. And I think Trump is showing through all of what you just said, through all the finger pointing on Bloomberg, which is just a liberal rag too, a liberal hack outfit, on Bloomberg, in the New York Times, in all these different places. People are saying, you know what? The guy's got something going on. He's right about it. And honest reporters, that's why I mentioned Anna Kasparian, are going to turn and say, you know what? He's kind of right. He's kind of right. But then again, let's keep it moving here at the front line with Joe and Joe. We knew Trump was right on certain things, not because we agree with him on everything, because obviously Joe and Joe don't, okay? But we voted for him 3 times, all right? But we do agree with him on certain things, one of which is that Barack Obama is one of the creepiest, shadiest characters to ever come across the American body politic, okay? And Tulsi Gabbard is not backing down.
Making a very intentional decision to create this manufactured, politicized piece of intelligence with the objective of subverting the will of the American people, who in November of 2016 delivered a historic victory to President Trump, defeating Hillary Clinton. And President Obama and his team, their goal was to essentially not accept the decision of the American people, and to use this manufactured, politicized intelligence as a means to enact what would become essentially a years-long coup against President Trump. You have gone into great detail over these years of what the effects of this document and this decision have resulted in. Obviously, a years-long Mueller investigation that cost taxpayers almost $40 million, 2 congressional impeachments, endless smears and attacks against not only President Trump, but his family. He had senior members of his team who were investigated, some arrested and jailed. We had heightened and increased tensions between the United States and Russia. The list goes on and on about the consequences of President Obama and his senior cabinet members politicizing intelligence once again, and I say these words very clearly, to enact what was essentially a years-long coup, subverting the will of the American people in that election in November.
Now, to me, it sounds like you have appointed powerful bureaucrats that just flat out created a narrative that was false to undermine a duly elected president. Now, if that's not a grand conspiracy, I don't know what would be. Do you see crimes here?
I do, Sean, and I'm referring all of these documents that we have found and uncovered, referring them to the Department of Justice for further investigation, accountability, and action, not just investigation, but action. Accountability has to take place. The American people's ability to have faith and trust in the integrity of our democratic republic is literally what's at stake, and therefore the future of our ability to exist as the country that we know it. This accountability is critical to make sure that this never happens again. Exposing the truth and naming those who are responsible should drive that accountability that has to take place. I just want to mention quickly, Sean, you mentioned the Steele dossier. That plays a critical role in these documents that we released, specifically because James Clapper, James Comey, John Brennan, they all knew that the Steele dossier was discredited at this point. It's not something any intelligence professional looked to as something that could be referenced or should be referenced in any intelligence assessment whatsoever. I know that there were professionals who were told include the Steele dossier in this January Obama-directed manufactured piece of intelligence, and they protested to people like John Brennan and James Clapper. They were shocked that it would even be considered. The Steele dossier was used in this manufactured assessment that President Obama directed be created, along with many other pieces of intelligence that the intelligence community itself, for months leading up to the election, said this is not credible and should not be used at all.
Now, here's my thing. This is a vengeance point of view. So let me preface it by that I'm tired, aside from everything else that she said, which is completely spot on. And the thing is I will say this before I go on. They better double her Secret Service protection. because she's not effing around. And why do I say that? She just said we're putting this all together and we're referring it to the Department of Justice for further investigation. And we want action. That means Obama better start quaking in his boots. Because whether or not he ends up in an orange jumpsuit, he needs to be in front of a judge. He needs to be in a courtroom. Same with Clapper and Brennan the Red. And why do I say that from a vengeance point of view? You put Paul Manafort in solitary confinement. George Papadopoulos, you ruined his life. Mike Flynn went broke because he had to hire lawyers to go and fight the charges against him. And all the people they went against. And my larger point about the party that you and I ostensibly vote for, the Republicans, they don't have the balls that the Democrats do. See, the Democrats don't put anybody in jail. They don't care. What do they care about? They have no moral compass anyway. They support child murder in the womb. So what do these people care about? They support mutilating minors without the parents knowing about it. So what do they care about? They'll put anybody in jail. And Lindsey Graham and all the rest of the establishment, they'll say, oh, no, we can't do that. It's going to hurt our country. Well, the Democrats don't care when they hurt our country. Paul Manafort's got to go to solitary confinement, and Barack Obama's spending his time on Martha's Vineyard. I hope she succeeds. I pray she succeeds. And I want to see people held to account. And first and foremost, I want to see Obama and I want to see Hillary. I want to see them both in front of a judge. Whether they get convicted or not, I want them both tried in a court, in open court, and I want it covered by the media the same way they covered Manafort and everybody else. Joe, the veins popping out of my head. Your thoughts?
It'll be interesting, is what all I could say. Is the media giving it the coverage it deserves? They're covering it. I think they could do a lot more, and they won't. Sadly, there's not enough people who voted for Obama, if you ask me, who their minds will change. There's nothing you can say. You could show them Obama with a smoking gun in his hand. They would never, ever, ever agree and or think that this is legitimate. And it's going to be painted that way. Again, the enemy of the American people, if you ask me, is the mainstream media, because they're not interested in the truth. They're not interested in what she said. It doesn't matter if you like Trump. This hurts the republic, and these people don't care. I'll speak for me. Because of what has happened in the last 10 years, because of what I witnessed during COVID, because of the lawfare, like Trump or not, I'm not part of the MAGA movement. I'm part of the Catholic movement. However, I do have eyes, and I watched a government go full throttle against a man that was elected. And that is an objective observation. And what took place, by the way, this cost the American taxpayer millions and millions and millions of dollars. All a bunch of crap. Every single bit of it was a bunch of crap. I have no faith in America anymore.
No,
I don't trust this government. I don't care who's in the office, Republican, Democrat, because of what I witnessed. And that is what she was addressing. And if you love this country, you should be concerned about that, because you cannot have a population that does not believe in the institution, because that's when bad things happen. See, I'm not a bad guy. I don't hurt people. I don't set things on fire. I don't kill people, but there are people that do. And when you have a population that no longer believes in the government, because I simply don't, based upon what she was talking about, that's an objective observation. You didn't have to like Trump. If you're just objective and you have a mind and you think on your own and you don't just get spoon-fed crap, you obviously saw what took place was unjust, and it went against everything that the country was about.
Right.
Everything that the country was about.
If she's proven right, let me ask you a quick question. If she's proven right and people actually get hauled into court, and you find that Clapper and Brennan and the rest of them actually get held to account, and they have to suffer the same fate as Paul Manafort did, okay, is the media going to still start keep calling Donald Trump a threat to democracy? Because to me, you're telling me, Mr. Obama, you're telling me you don't respect the will of the American people.
But we
Because
know that. He's no different than Mark Carney. He has he's ideologically driven. We know that. But you know something? You touched on something, Joe, that's very, very, very important. You used the phrase threat to democracy. We heard that constantly. It's a threat to them. It was a threat to the Donald Trump, and this is one of the driving reasons why they fought against him the way that they did, is because he was a threat to the institutional democracy. It had nothing to do with you. And that's where I get frustrated, because people who voted against Trump, many of them actually think that it had something to do with them when they said it's a threat to democracy. And I'm going to give you a perfect example of that. Donald Trump is very agnostic about same-sex marriage. Donald Trump has not shown one example. You can't find one example whereby he has hurt the gay community. Yet, talk to someone who's gay, and they'll be like, "Oh, Donald Trump is this. What has he really done
what
to
did he
you?
do to you?
Nothing.
What did he do to you?
Nothing. But the media painted it that way, and that is the truth. Donald Trump has done nothing to gay rights, established gay rights in America. Zero. I'm just giving one example of the propaganda. It had everything to do with the institutional democracy, which has nothing to do with you, because they don't care about you.
Right.
And that is exactly what this is about. They were fighting for their own life because they feared what is going on right now would happen. And it is now happening.
It is happening. It is happening. There are some things that we want more. I'm not going to deny that. You want more. I want more. Okay. You and I have our problem. Beautiful bill. Take the problem of tariffs. Tariffs are one of those things where that's a payoff. There was a payoff to all these other countries to make sure that we kept the ideological narrative going. And that, yes, that does include abortion, gay marriage, and all that stuff. And our payoff to them was, okay, we're going to have this unreciprocal tariff situation where our people, who you abundantly have pointed out, are people who they don't give a damn about, you and me and people watching us at the front line with Joe and Joe. They don't care about us. It was all a payoff thing. Like you said, Trump, and the tariffs are a perfect example. The same with trying to do rescissions and all that and take money away from the agencies. That's him trying to dismantle, call it deep state, whatever the case might be, all the people that, like you said, want the institutions to remain in place because that's how they make their money. That's how they gain their power. And they make their money and gain their power by taking your money and my money and everybody out their money and taking away any power we have. That's what happened in 2016. We don't give a damn what that Donald Trump won the election. We know he won the election. We know Hillary Clinton dropped the ball because she was a weak candidate. She's a weak person, but she's a weak candidate. We know that, but we can't let it stand because Joe and the people that voted for Donald Trump, we can't let them have any real influence in our country. So what do we have to do? We have to discredit Trump. And they did it. They lied about it. And let's hope to God and pray to God somebody gets held accountable. Again, Joe, I'll go back to Manafort. My heart went out to Manafort. I said, that guy not only should not be in jail, they stuck him in a hole. See, when the Democrats beat you, Joe, they don't just beat you. Then they smash the boot on your face. So not only was Manafort convicted, they stuck him in a hole. A nonviolent guy, they stuck in solitary confinement. I want that to happen to Clapper or Brennan or, dare I say, Obama or Hillary. I want it to happen to just one of them. Just one. And now
they'll probably throw, sadly, what will happen is they'll probably throw someone to the wolves to satisfy the horde. I don't expect anything to happen to Hillary or Obama. I do expect them to get deeply discredited. By Trump winning this election, it definitely... Obama made a very fatal mistake during the recent presidential election when he scolded those African-American men. That was a humongous embarrassment. He lost a lot of juice as a result of that. That's a fact. That was a big faux pas, very similar to Hillary calling half of America deplorables. By Trump winning, he also lost a lot of juice. He's not dead in the water yet, though. However, he does not have the political power that he did have. This is going to hurt him more. It is going to expose him. He's not going to go to jail. Should he? He should. So should Biden.
Like you said, at the very least, it should expose him.
No, it will. This is going to get, and sadly, Joe, this is the sick part. You know, the Joy Reid crowd, they wouldn't believe it. They could have a picture of Barack Obama strangling a 4-year-old. It could be on film. It could be on the cover of every mat. They'd vote for him.
Well, here's the thing.
And there's a lot of people like that.
Oh, Joe, I agree with you 1,000%.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There's nothing you could say. Nothing.
They blasted Donald Trump when he said, I could shoot somebody in the middle of Times Square. I'm paraphrasing. I shoot somebody in the middle of Times Square and people will still vote for me. I would say, yeah, but the people that were criticizing him for saying that, like Joy Reid, well, Obama could strangle a baby right on national TV, and you'll still vote for him.
There's no question.
Joe Biden could stick his fingers up a woman's private parts, who was one of his assistants, who came out and accused him of that, and you still voted for him. So don't play the double standards. If I vote for Trump for all his faults, you're doing the same thing with Barack Obama and the rest of your party. Final thought, Joe, on that.
Ultimately, this is a good thing for America. And I said this in the beginning, in the opening monologue. I do think it's a distraction, though. I think it was floated now strategically to get people away from the Epstein situation, which, if you ask me, was a tragedy. It was a tragedy on a number of levels, but mainly because Epstein was in bed, and not necessarily, I'm not talking figuratively, sexually. Epstein knew how to move money. I think that was the driver with Epstein. The fetish thing is a secondary issue that sadly most people focus upon, and it's horrible, and it's a tragedy. But Epstein was a freelancer. This is my opinion, and this is from the information that I basically vetted. He was a freelancer who knew how to hide people's money. And that impacts both Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah.
So you cannot take him down. That is why he wound up in jail. And that is why, if you ask me, he wound up dead. He was a money launderer who had a fetish. The people focus on the fetish, but the real issue is he basically, if you ask me, knew how to blackmail people through the use of moving their money around, whereby they did not pay taxes, and that would put them in jail. And he did that for a living, and no one cares, including Donald Trump, and this is a distraction because of it.
Well, let's move on. You're joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello. We certainly are way in the breach with this conversation today. We normally go live Thursday nights, 9 o'clock. When that doesn't happen, we go live Sundays in the afternoon. But we have to talk about, see, if you were to criticize Israel, okay, and their actions, what you get from, again, the enemy of mankind, which is the media, there's a rise of anti-Semitism. No, there's not. What there is people are raising their consciousness to understand, Israel does some pretty atrocious things too. But then that's then described as anti-Semitism. So let's play a clip from Mike Knowles. We're going to come back and discuss this.
Church. We turn now from Muslims to Christians. Horrible story out of Gaza. Horrible story. The IDF has struck the only Catholic church in Gaza. According to the reporting, 10:20 a.m. yesterday, the compound of the Holy Family in Gaza, which belongs to the Latin Patriarch, was struck by the Israeli army. 3 people died from their injuries. 9 others were wounded, including one in critical condition, and the priest, the parish priest, Father Gabriel Romanelli, was also injured. This is the line from the Latin Patriarch. The Latin Patriarchate, which is the Catholic Church in Gaza, the Latin Patriarchate strongly condemns this tragedy and this targeting of innocent civilians and of a sacred place. So Israel came out later on after international outcry, including from the White House. Israel came out and said, oh, it was a mistake. It was an accident. Was it an accident? I don't see any evidence that it was an accident. Can you provide me some proof that it was an accident? You struck the church. Churches are pretty obvious targets. They're pretty obvious sites. You know, there's certain features, the cross, steeple, pretty obvious. Can you explain to me how this was an accident? Haven't heard that. The Latin Patriarch seems to think it was intentional. The targeting of innocent civilians, not just a stray bullet, the targeting. And he goes on, he says, however, this tragedy is not greater or more terrible than the many others that have befallen Gaza. Many other innocent civilians have also been harmed, displaced, and killed. Death, suffering, and destruction are everywhere. This horrific war must come to a complete end so that we may commence the long work of restoring human dignity. Diane Montagna, who's a great reporter on the Vatican and Rome and the Pope, says His Holiness renews his call for an immediate ceasefire. So this is talking about Pope Leo. He expresses his profound hope for dialogue, reconciliation, and enduring peace in the region. And then the
So you get the gist, okay? Now, here's a couple points I want to make. Number one, the Pope was very clear. He called it targeting. Cardinal Pete Sabala, who is the patriarch of that area of Jerusalem, he called it was a targeted thing. Why do we say that, and why do we know that? Because we're constantly told that the most precise and sophisticated intelligence operation in the world is the Mossad. And the IDF is going to take action based on the information given to the military by the Mossad. You didn't know it was a Catholic church? You want us all to believe that? And my problem with this more than anything, Joe, has to go with anti-Semitism in general and the environment that we're living in. You can't say anything against Israel. You cannot say anything without being called an anti-Semite. You can't criticize them in any way. And I'll give you a case in point. I think it was Rabbi Barkley when he did his interview with Candace Owens. And he said, I'm going to quote Golda Meir, and I'm paraphrasing. He said, I'm going to quote Golda Meir, who said, I don't hate them. I hate what they make us do to them. I'm sorry, that's not a legitimate defense for what's going on in Gaza. That is not. You were attacked, and everybody acknowledged you were attacked. And people had rightful outrage against the Islamic terrorists who did that to you on October 7th. Rightful outrage, and expected a response, quite frankly. Okay? I would have expected a response. I would have supported a response. It's now going too far, and it has been going too far. So when we see the pictures, okay, I've seen the pictures of the Israeli women who were raped and killed. And my heart goes out to them and their families and the right for Israel to defend itself. But what you're doing now is not defense. It's not by any objective standard. And you can't call it anti-Semitism to say women and children are dying. It doesn't matter that Hamas is hiding behind them. You're supposed to be so sophisticated. You're supposed to have this great military, this great intelligence agency. Normally, you know exactly where they are and you take them out. This whole thing that's going on, and now with this attack on the Catholic Church, and we're not just covering this because this was an attack on the Catholic Church. We've been saying this at Frontline with Joe and Joe for a time now. Okay, the response is not proportional. And under any just war theory, you can't just say, oh, I hate what you make me do to you. Does that mean you have to destroy the whole place? Does that mean you have to kill everybody in the place and just clean it all out? Because guess what? The world is not going to be on your side. And right now, Joe, the world is not on the side of Israel. They're not.
Well, the world for a while now hasn't been on the side of Israel. We have been on the side of Israel. But the interesting thing, and I invite people to listen to that whole clip, is Mike Knowles, who is a huge supporter of Israel, his exact words, "You're losing me." That is a benchmark that you should pay attention to if you are, say, the Israel lobby. Another individual who is a humongous supporter of Israel is Mike Huckabee.
Mike
Who
Huckabee
also came out strong against that action. Another benchmark, if you are the Israel lobby, that you should pay attention to, because ultimately the public, as in the American public, the world has been against what's been going on in Gaza for a very, very, very long time. Just to give a little background, I don't want to get too long-winded. We're the only country that stands in the way of the UN making Palestine an official nation. What a lot of people don't know is Israel became a nation through an action of the UN. Well, because you have to, I believe it's the Security Council. Someone could check me on that. You have to have a unanimous vote.
It has to be unanimous.
We're the only vote that's preventing that from happening. Well, the people of America are now coming on board with the rest of the world, and it has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. It has everything to do with policy. And we don't agree with the policy. By the way, Israel, Netanyahu, his own people, he has a 30% approval rating. His own people are not on the side of his foreign policy in many respects. So Israel is in a very dangerous situation, if you ask me. How that's going to spin, I don't know. But all eyes of the world are watching it. And here is the last point I want to make, and you touched upon it. The stigma is gone, Joe. When you have people like Mike Huckabee and Mike Knowles, who has a substantial platform, who works for Ben Shapiro at the Daily Wire, and he makes a statement like, "You're losing me," there is no more stigma. So now it's fair game. We're going to talk about foreign policy like we talk about any foreign policy in France, in Italy, in Russia, in China. And to be honest with you, right now, they're in a bad place, Joe.
That's right.
Place.
I remember
use them.
I remember growing up. I remember when I was in my 20s and my father would always talk about Israel, right? My father was not college educated, but he educated himself. He read a lot, always read. He was very, very good at history. He understood history. And I remember him saying, this is like in the 90s. This was before he passed away, early 2000s. And I remember he always used to, he goes, I was on their side in 1947. He goes, I was on their side when they kicked out the British. He goes, I was on their side in 1967. Okay. When or in 1947, and then in 1967, where all the neighboring nations turned around and targeted Israel. He goes, I was on their side. It was one of the greatest military achievements. They bombed Egypt. They left the Egyptian Air Force on the airstrips, planes in ruins. Okay, they defended themselves. My father would say, I was on their side. He goes, and this has got to be a little over 25 years ago. My father was saying, but not anymore. He goes, they're not acting in a just way. They're not purely acting in a defensive way. And even in an offensive way, their targets are not the people they're supposed to be targeting. It's almost like they're trying to make a point. But in making that point, they're not getting anybody on their side. They're not getting any sympathy. There's a lot. You mentioned the people in Israel. There's a lot of people in Israel that think Israel and their policy vis-a-vis their neighbors is not supposed to be what Israel's doing. These are Israeli voices.
Oh, no question. Like I said, he has 30% approval rating. Netanyahu is not a popular president.
Now, we'd have a lot of problems, let's say, on certain issues like economic issues and things like that, because a lot of these people are on the left, okay? So they're what you would call, let's say, more liberal or leftist Israelis in the Knesset. But nonetheless, on this point, they're making a good point. Israel wants to exist, okay? I would say Israel
and they have a right to.
They have a right to exist, okay? But what you don't have a right to do, and this is where this is where the discussion gets into areas that a lot of people don't like or they're uncomfortable with. Stop exporting what you believe to your Muslim neighbors because they don't believe it. They don't believe in abortion. They don't believe in gay marriage. They don't believe in transgender. They don't believe in a lot of things you try to promote in that area. You want to exist. You want to have that inside of your country. You could go right ahead. You people in Israel, you're going to have to fight all that out internally in the Knesset by the laws that you enact. But don't export that to these Muslim nations because guess what? Aside from the fact that a lot of these Muslim terrorists are off the chain to begin with, okay? But you piss off ordinary Muslims. When all of this stuff is exported to these, I think Michael Jones points this out all the time. Of course, he's the biggest Jew hater there is, at least according to the ADL and the Southern Poverty Law Center, okay? But he tries to point that out. Stop exporting these things to places that don't want it. And then they resent you for it. And then when they fight back, you say, well, they're being animals. Well, no, not always. In some cases, yes. We know Muslims have been aggressive since the time of their founding. We know that as Catholics. You can look at the history of Islam is right there in the history of the Catholic Church. It's central or a major part of the history of the Catholic Church and what the Catholic Church did to defend Europe against Muslim aggression. We get all that. But at the end of the day, you're in the middle of it all in the Middle East. And you're exporting this stuff and you're pushing people's buttons. And then when people point that out, wow, there's a real rise in anti-Semitism. It's just calling a spade, dude. It's not that they don't like you because you're a Jew. A lot of times they don't like you because of the things that you as a government and in your policies that you do. And they resent you for it. And it's just leading to more and more and more and more conflict. But I think my primary point aside from that is the response has been overkill. And I mean that term literally. It has been overkill. And it comes time you got to pull back because now the Pope is coming out. Now, the Pope has been calling for that, but now even more so in Cardinal Pizzaballa, given this attack on the Catholic Church, even more so now. So you've been acting inappropriately, and there needs to be some sort of an accommodation. You're going to have to come to some sort of a ceasefire. Joe, I'll throw it over to you.
Ultimately, I think the goal is to destroy everything there. Where there's absolutely, it's uninhabitable, there's nothing left, and then they build from scratch. That, I think, is the goal, and I think that is what they're doing. And I don't think they care what anyone says. The only thing they care about is that America continues to financially support them. And during Trump's tenure, that is going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
But what eventually will happen, and I actually thought Obama was going to do it, and it would have made him a lasting legacy, but he didn't, was have the UN vote to make Palestine a nation. I actually thought that was going to be the exclamation point of his presidency, and he didn't do it. He inched towards it, but he didn't do it. But what is eventually going to happen is when a liberal president is elected in America, and that will happen down the road, I can't say when, keep in mind, all of these Ivy League schools, which produce most of the presidents in America, are vehemently anti-Israel right now. So that is the echo chamber that the elites are moving forward from. You are going to get a president that is not going to support Israel in the Security Council, and Palestine is going to have their day. That is the direction it's going, because we're the only thing that stands in the way of it and have for a while, and the elites are moving back from that. Keep an eye on it.
I would agree with you. Just one final thought on that is that there is rightful sympathy for, as I mentioned earlier, 1947, 1967, and the times where the surrounding Muslim neighbors of Israel have come together to attack Israel, and that's rightful sympathy, okay, and support for Israel. What they need to understand is, see, people who talk like us, I'm not on the side of these wackos on these college campuses, and I know you're not.
Oh,
Joe,
no way.
either.
They're freaking out of their
Michael
mind.
Jones is not on their side either, by the way, okay, because he knows them for what they have an agenda, okay, and they're trying to promote their agenda. None of us right-minded people, we're not in league with them whatsoever. If those people had their way, Israel wouldn't exist.
Oh, dude. But here's the thing.
That's why we got to draw that line, Joe.
Joe, 100%. But that's the point I was making. Presidents are coming from that basically pool. I mean, the people who go to Brown, the people who go to Penn, the people who go to Harvard, who go to Columbia, that's who becomes the leadership of the world. I mean, and they are vehemently, including the presidents of these universities, vehemently anti-Israel. Vehemently. And they're not hiding it. It's not masked. It's out in the open. And like I said, it's one vote away. America could back away from that vote, and Palestine is a nation, which means if you attack that nation, you become a terrorist state. in the eyes of the world. The whole worldview changes. You become a pariah the size of North Korea, of the Sudan, of Yemen. That's how the world would view you, by Palestine being legitimized as a nation by the UN. And that could easily happen in the next liberal president that is in that seat in Washington, D.C. I thought Obama was going to do it. He didn't. It's coming.
No, you're right. I love the comment, Blazing Shackles. If these two added their two IQs together, they'd still be 20 points shy of 100. So, Joe, that's what Blazing Shackles thinks.
I love
Thank
it.
you, brother. We appreciate it. Hey, listen, hey, we're a free speech platform here, so you can say what you want. So we pointed that out. I think you're wrong, by the way, but that's okay. You could be respectfully wrong. That was respectful enough, I guess. So anyway, let's go to our final clip for tonight, Joe. We're running over for an hour right now. Why can't we started the conversation talking about Azie, right? Azie was an entertainer. Hulk Hogan was an entertainer. Johnny Carson had something to say about that. And I think Joe and Joe want to say something about what Johnny Carson had to say.
People say he'll never take a serious controversy. Well, I have an answer to that. I said, now, tell me the last time that Jack Benny, Red Skelton, Benny comedian, used his show to do serious issues. That's not what I'm there for. Can't they see that? But you're not. Why do they think that just because you have a Tonight Show that you must deal in serious issues? It's a danger. It's a real danger. Once you start that, you start to get that self-important feeling that what you say has great import. And you know, strangely enough, you could use that show as a forum. You could sway people. And I don't think you should as an entertainer.
How right is that?
Dude, that's almost pathetic.
Really, because if you think about it, okay, we were told anyway, I guess this is what we're in a 24-hour news cycle, okay? The difference between when I was a kid and you were a kid now, when it comes to how often we receive news, it is on a minute-to-minute basis, and it goes on 24 hours a day, particularly because of, social media and everything else. Why do people find it hard, or they get very defensive when guys like us tell Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon or Colbert, who, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, he got fired this week, am I right? Or his show's not going to continue, okay? Why is it that they are shocked when we say, well, we're not watching your show anymore? I watched Carson when I was a kid. My mother used to put on Johnny Carson every night, okay? Except school nights. But nonetheless, but watch Johnny Carson all the time. Johnny Carson knew what he was. Johnny Carson was an entertainer, okay? Johnny Carson had a lot of power. Johnny Carson could make or break your career, okay? And there was sometimes he disinvited people back. But as far as controversy and getting into politics and things like that, Johnny Carson wanted no part of that. These guys, Jimmy Kimmel, who, by the way, most people don't know, started out on the Ben Stein show. Remember Ben Stein Wants Your Money or Wants to Give You Money?
Sure.
Remember that show? Jimmy Kimmel got his start on Ben Stein, who's a conservative.
I like Ben Stein, actually.
Ben Stein is a supremely intelligent individual.
And he's fair.
Jimmy Kimmel, I remember. What's that?
He's fair.
He's fair. Jimmy Kimmel, I remember seeing on there. Obviously, Jimmy Fallon was on Saturday Night Live. Colbert, I don't know. I forgot or don't even care where he came from. All right. But here's my point. They all made themselves, as Johnny Carson said, you're so self-important. Why do people want to judge? I mentioned the 24-hour news cycle. I just want to get out of the 24-hour news cycle for about an hour. I don't want us here. Don't bring on Taylor Swift to your show to talk about Donald Trump. Talk about Taylor Swift. If you bring on Robert De Niro, who's going to talk about his new movie, talk about Robert De Niro's new movie. Make people laugh. Have some fun. Can't we escape for an effing hour? Is my point. And Johnny did that. That's why he was so successful. Johnny didn't want to get involved in all that stuff because, as he said, he didn't think of himself as being too self-important to have to talk about that. He was there to entertain. These guys have lost their value to entertain. They've lost their ability to entertain because they want to get into politics. And guess what? That's why Colbert's show no longer exists.
Well, also, Colbert was losing $40 million a year, the show itself. That's a fact. You could look that up. It wasn't profitable. And when you're running a business, you have every reason to look at it, from an accountability perspective to the profit line. It wasn't profitable. So they're cutting it. But ultimately, from a business, because we're talking about business perspective, and this was something I believe was a humongous mistake. It's now waning, thank goodness, the woke agenda. Why bring politics into business? If I sell coffee, why do I want to piss off some people who could potentially be my customers? At the minimum, just be agnostic. Like, I could speak for me at work. I don't care what your politics are. We're at work. It's not a place to talk about it. Now, if we're friends and we want to have a little conversation and we're both open to that conversation, have at it. But ultimately, I'm here to work. I'm here to make money. And as far as Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel, don't you want Republicans to watch your show too? Isn't that good business sense? Why piss off half the nation? They're potential customers, clients. These are people that drive your advertising revenue. Why would you do that? Be agnostic, like Carson. Be funny, be interesting, but don't push people away that could help you. And they got lost in their own ideology. In many senses, it's a form of Trump derangement syndrome. All the business sense, all the logic, all the common sense was thrown out. And now you're completely irrelevant, just like the Oscars and the Academy Awards in Hollywood.
Who watches the Oscars?
No one's interested. No one's watching, just like MSNBC. No one's watching. You did it to yourself.
Right.
And the numbers don't lie.
No, the numbers don't lie. And like you said, if I'm a news, or if I'm a network, okay, why do I want to piss off half my audience? I want them to watch. I want, again, that goes to advertising dollars and everything else. Joe, by the way, I think you and I struck a nerve today because we're getting more negative comments. Joe, by the way, you're dumb and so am I. We're both climate
We
deniers.
didn't finish fourth grade, but that's okay.
Right, we should have stopped in fourth grade. We love it. And we love you all. We love it. Don't leave. You guys can hang around if you want. All right. We're not looking for sycophants. So if you want to criticize what we say, is fine. I don't mind being called dumb. I've been called dumb a few times in my life, but I love to know an argument. We're not going to let you click into the show. This is the Joe and Joe show. This is the front line, but you could chat away all you want. And our people in the chat room, they're going to, they'll react to that. But that's exactly right. I don't think there's anything dumb in saying that from a business point of view, Stephen Colbert deserves to lose his job. So does Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon. So does Joy Reid. CNN was about to go bankrupt. And what did they do, Joe? Okay, what did they do?
They made a business decision, and it
brought on
proved to be a good one.
Right? That's what's happening. Their ratings are going back up. Why? Because they realize I could listen to liberals. I could listen to them. Right? I've listened to them my whole life. I've had no choice because that's all that's been broadcast is liberals, liberals, liberals. Okay? But if that's all I'm going to listen to is liberals shouting, all white men are racist, all men are misogynist, all Catholics are anti-Semitic. If I have to listen to all that and there's not an opposing point of view on the same show, or at least on another show that you give to up to a primetime audience, then guess what? I'm not going to watch anymore. CNN used to do that. Tucker Carlson, Crossfire. There was Pat Buchanan was on Crossfire. There was always the liberal, Robert Novak. There was always the liberal on the other side. Liberals can enjoy the show because they got a liberal there. Conservatives can enjoy the show because there's a conservative there. Now, they shouted too much, as somebody just accused us of shouting too much. Sorry, we're Italians from New Jersey. We shout a little bit. Deal with it, okay? But nonetheless, CNN had that template, and then they went away from it, mostly because of Donald Trump. Now they're getting it back, and guess what? Now they're probably going to start making money again, only because they made one decision. Let's put Scott Jennings on. Let's have a conservative voice in there to mix it up a little bit. And that's all we're saying about late night is now late night's not the same purpose, but late night shows should just be what Johnny Carson said. It's just about entertainment. Let me get away from the news cycle for a while. I don't want to deal with it for about an hour. I want somebody like Don Rickles or whoever else. I want them to make me laugh. Rodney Dangerfield. I want Johnny to have a show where people entertain me. They talk to me about their movies. They make me laugh, and I could escape from all this BS for just an hour. Joe, I'm going to give you the final word.
Ultimately, money talks and BS walks, Joe. And money moves the dial. And we've seen the country react. Wokeism has died in many respects. It has. I work in corporate America. It's people have backed away from it. And that should say something to the people who bought into it, who actually believed that this is what these people stood upon. They actually believed it was real. It was nothing more than virtue signaling. And they would back away from you in a second, just like our politicians have backed away from us. Our politicians, as in the people we vote for who supposedly represent us, no longer represent us. Something has to change. People have to have confidence in the institution again, because they don't. And when people don't have confidence in the institution, and this is the words of Barack Obama at Stanford University, you're in a dangerous situation. And America is in that situation. That's why you have a communist who could potentially become the mayor of New York City.
New York City.
More and more radical individuals are going to present themselves to the American people because America has lost hope in the institution. It's not in all of our interest to be in that situation. That hope has to be restored once again.
No, Joe, listen, a great place to end it. The hope has to be restored. Once again, I would say if I see a fair and open discussion about all the things that are important to all of us as human beings, and I see that it's a sincere seeking of the truth, then guess what? I'll watch. I might hear opinions I don't like, but I don't care. At least I know the people that present that are trying to give both sides, get to the truth, whatever the issue might be, and then we can make decisions based on that. And I think that's what will restore, I know for you and for me, trust in the institutions. We want to thank you. We're going to leave you with a clip, so don't go anywhere. We want to thank you for joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Normally Thursday nights, 9 o'clock Eastern time. Today's an exception. But yeah, we're going to keep it moving. We're going to keep talking about all these things. Help us out. Like, subscribe. If you like the conversation, some people in the chat room, Joe, didn't like the conversation. However, if you want to expose us as boobs and dummies, you could share the interview or the conversation also. We don't mind that. We don't mind criticism. But we want to thank you. Share it wherever you are. X, Rumble, Facebook, YouTube. Help us out. We'll see you next week. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.
You got? Where did you get it from? In whose interest you exercise it? To whom you're accountable, and how can we get rid of you? And if you can't get rid of the people who govern you, you don't live in a